Welcome back to the deep dive. When you hear about these big international summits, like APEC, the headlines usually grab onto the politics, maybe the disagreements.
Yeah, the high level photo ops, the sort of formal statements, that's what usually gets
It's
reported.
exactly. But when we started digging into the commercial sources, the business side of things from this recent APEC meeting, it painted a really different picture.
A much more tangible one, I'd say. Less about the ceremony, more about the actual function, what deals were getting done.
Right. And our mission today is really to unpack that, to look past the usual diplomatic summaries and get into the sheer scale of the economic wins.
And we're focusing on a couple of really significant things, two major defense pursuits, and just the overall volume of corporate investment that came out of it. We're talking huge numbers.
Huge is right. I mean, one number that jumped out during the research was this potential defense contract of possibly hitting 60 trillion one.
hmm
60 trillion. I had to double check that. For our listeners globally, that's roughly what, 45 billion US dollars?
Yeah, around that mark. It's an extraordinary figure for one single defense export deal, almost unprecedented.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is how APEC itself was used. It wasn't just for show, it was a platform, a stage, really, to push forward these critical economic exchanges.
Not just with the big players either.
No, I mean, obviously, talks happen with the US, China, Japan, the usual suspects. But these sources highlight major moves with countries like Canada and also the Philippines.
Okay, so diverse partners,
Yep.
developed economies and developing ones.
Exactly. It shows these summits are vital arenas for very specific, very high level business diplomacy.
Okay, let's dive into that. Starting with the really big number, the Canadian defense deal, that 60 trillion one potential.
Yeah, we absolutely have to start there. If this deal goes through, it would instantly become the largest defense export contract in South Korea's history, period.
Just monumental then.
Absolutely. A total game changer. It means decades of work, sustained industrial activity. It's a massive prize.
And what exactly is Canada looking for? What's the project itself?
They're looking to acquire 12 new submarines, diesel electric, around the 3,000-ton mark.
So not small boats. These are serious naval assets.
Oh, definitely. These are blue water capable submarines designed for pretty sustained operations far from shore. Serious hardware.
And who's in the running?
Well, the competition is intense. You've got a South Korean consortium, that's Hanwha Ocean and HD Hyundai Heavy Industries, teamed up. They were selected as qualified bidders,
Okay.
and they're going head to head with a major German defense company. So it's a serious fight.
Sounds like a tough technical and commercial competition.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at suggest this went way beyond just the company's sales teams, right? It became a major diplomatic push.
Oh, completely. You could call it a total war effort on the diplomatic front. It came from the very highest levels of government, signaling this was a top national priority.
Like what kind of actions are we talking about?
Well, for instance, the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, actually visited the Jude shipyard in person. That's quite unusual for a head of government during a bidding process.
He didn't just like cut a ribbon or something.
No. He put on a hard hat, went down to the shipyard, and physically boarded the newest submarine that had just been launched, the Jang-yong Silham.
Wow. That's quite a statement.
It sends a massive signal, doesn't it? It shows serious interest, builds trust. And frankly, it helps smooth the political path for approval later if they win.
But isn't there a risk there? If the PM gets that involved publicly and then the bid doesn't win, doesn't that make the diplomatic fallout worse?
That's a really good point.
Oh,
It
it's-
absolutely raises the stakes, yes. The political cost of failure is higher.
So why do it?
Because the potential upside, that 60 trillion won contract, is just so enormous. The calculation is that the benefit of showing that top level commitment outweighs the risk. You cut through bureaucracy, you signal guaranteed government backing, things a purely private bid might struggle to offer.
And President Lee Jae-myung reinforced that.
He did. In his private meeting with Carney, he explicitly talked about South Korea wanting to help Canada rapidly build up its capabilities, and importantly, strengthening Canada's own defense industry, too.
So framing it as a partnership, not just a sale.
Precisely, co-development. And the diplomatic effort went even further, down to the details.
Like what?
Like First Lady Kim Ha-young meeting with Prime Minister Carney's wife, Diana Fox Carney. During their schedule together, Kim Ha-young wore a red handbok.
Red. Canada's color.
Exactly. A deliberate, though subtle cultural nod. It shows incredible coordination across the board.
It really suggests, almost military precision in the diplomatic campaign.
Yeah.
Every lever being pulled for this one massive contract. It's about Partnership, respect, showing long-term commitment, not just specs on a page.
Every single element was designed to give the South Korean bid an edge over the German competition.
Okay, so that's Canada. High stakes, huge potential payoff, very focused on one big sale. But APEC also showed a different kind of strategy unfolding, didn't it? Something more long-term, maybe?
Yes, definitely. If you look at the interactions with the Philippines, the approach was quite different. It wasn't just about selling new equipment.
This was more about strategic cooperation, building something lasting.
Exactly. It's about integration and sustainability. President Ferdinand Marcos from the Philippines met directly with Hanwha Ocean executives in Gyeongju.
Okay.
And the talks quickly went beyond just buying new ships or submarines. They focused on two key areas for existing and future assets.
Which were?
First, cooperation on MRO, that's maintenance, repair, and overhaul for the Philippine submarine fleet.
MRO. That's the long tail, isn't it? The decades of service and support after the initial purchase.
It's the economic anchor, really. If you secure the MRO contract for a country's major defense systems, you guarantee technical reliance, you guarantee revenue streams for years, decades even.
And you essentially become indispensable to their operational capacity.
Pretty much. It guarantees that their systems stay compatible with yours, it deepens intelligence sharing, it solidifies the alliance in a very practical way.
So that's a very different model from the big Canadian bid. Instead of one huge payout, it's about becoming a permanent, essential partner. What kind of influence does that buy geopolitically?
It's substantial. You're ensuring technical alignment, creating a sort of managed dependency, which sounds negative, but in alliances, it means stability and predictability. The corporation gets reliable income, the ally gets reliable service.
That MRO part alone sounds incredibly strategic. But there was a second part to Hanwha's proposal, too.
Yes, and this one is maybe even more significant in terms of integration. They proposed providing support by deploying experienced South Korean submarine commanders to assist the Philippines.
Deploying commanders. That sounds complex. How does that work without, infringing on their sovereignty?
It's a very delicate thing. It's not about South Korean officers taking command of Philippine vessels. It's about knowledge transfer, exporting the operational doctrine, the expertise.
So training and mentorship at a very high level.
Exactly. You send experienced personnel to help them stand up the capability efficiently, avoid pitfalls, ensure safety, and basically embed your way of operating those systems.
Which, again, locks them into your ecosystem training procedures, maybe even future upgrades.
It does. For the Philippines, it means getting their new capabilities online faster and more effectively. For South Korea, it means that deeper integration, ensuring the systems are used effectively, which reflects well on the hardware too. It really shifts the dynamic from just seller-buyer to something more like mentor-partner.
That feels like a much more profound, maybe even more influential long-term play than chasing the massive Canadian contract. It's like exporting the whole package, not just the box.
And this brings up a really interesting strategic question. What's the future focus? Is it these huge competitive one-off mega deals like Canada? Or is it building these comprehensive long-haul partnerships involving MRO, training, personnel support, like with the Philippines?
APEC seems to show both strategies are being pursued very aggressively at the same time.
Right, tailoring the approach based on the partner and the opportunity.
Okay, so we've got the huge potential Canadian deal, the deep strategic play in the Philippines. Let's zoom out a bit. What about the broader economic picture from APEC? Our sources mentioned massive corporate attendance.
Yeah, the scale was pretty impressive. Something like 1,700 business leaders were involved in the APEC events. And these aren't just mid-level managers. These are the people running major global companies, making the big decisions.
So a lot of business gets done on the sidelines of the main political meetings.
Absolutely. This is where a huge amount of global commerce actually gets negotiated and planned out, often separate from the government-to-government talks.
So beyond the defense sector, what was the sort of bottom line figure that came out of all those corporate discussions? The total investment pledged.
The official government reporting tallied it up. Corporate-level investment commitments promised during APEC reached about 13 trillion won overall.
13 trillion. So still a very significant number, even alongside the massive defense figures.
Definitely. And that covers everything else: technology partnerships, plans for new factories, energy deals, all the various agreements hashed out by that big group of business attendees. It signals a pretty strong wave of economic confidence and planned expansion across the APEC region.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. We've got the potential 60 trillion won Canadian deal. driven by intense diplomacy. We've got the long-term strategic partnership with the Philippines focusing on MRO and expertise. And then this broader 13 trillion won corporate investment wave. What's the main takeaway here?
I think the main takeaway is that APEC this time around really functioned as a powerful engine for economic expansion, maybe more visibly than usual. We saw the full court press for a potentially historic defense sale.
Right.
But we also saw the quieter, maybe more strategic work of building these deep, lasting defense relationships through service and support, like with the Philippines.
It really shows South Korea expanding its economic reach significantly, using different tools for different partners, developing big sales, long-term service, not just relying on the old pathways.
And that contrast we talked about is key. The huge, upfront, competitive win versus the sustained, integrated, long-term partnership.
One's a sprint, the other's a marathon, maybe.
Kind of. The Canadian deal is like landing a whale, massive immediate impact. The Philippines deal is more like building an ecosystem, potentially less initial splash, but maybe more influence and stability over decades.
It does feel like a shift, or at least a diversification, in how international business, especially in sensitive sectors like defense, is being done. Moving beyond just selling the product to selling the entire capability package, maintenance, training, the whole thing.
Which leads to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on. In today's global economy, especially in these high-value, high-stakes industries, what's ultimately more valuable? Is it securing that single massive upfront payment like the potential Canadian deal?
Mm.
Or is it locking in a customer and ally for decades through guaranteed service, MRO, and expertise like the Philippines model suggests?
Prioritizing the long game versus the immediate jackpot.
Exactly. What does that choice tell us about a company's strategy or even a nation's economic strategy? How do you balance those two approaches for long-term stability and influence? It's a fundamental question that businesses and governments everywhere are grappling with right now.